Some people broke into our house and made us show us all his money. And I could hear my parents yelling downstairs. They said, help!
She appeared to be the ideal child, constantly grinning, forever courteous, eternally striving, perhaps excessively so. Her mother and father held a vision, a girl who would finish first in her graduating class, transform into a physician, fill them with pride. That vision became her cage, and she never broke free. This isn't about a wicked child. This tells of quiet suffering, of expectations crushing down, of a young woman who pleaded for assistance in countless ways, yet nobody listened. When they finally paid attention, destruction had already arrived. She spoke falsehoods, initially tiny ones, then larger deceptions. Eventually, her entire existence turned into acting. Counterfeit report cards, artificial friendships, a fabricated existence. Behind the mask, isolation, guilt, terror, plus anger she hadn't recognized within herself. This wasn't motivated by wealth, or payback, or malice. It stemmed from feeling unseen, from attempting to vanish the only method she believed possible. Perhaps the most terrifying aspect is how many opportunities we possessed to prevent it. If someone had examined more carefully, if someone had posed the correct inquiry, you'll desire to despise her. You'll want to shout, how could she commit such acts? Yet, when this account concludes, you'll wonder something different. How did we fail to predict this? Suppose I revealed the warning signals existed from the beginning, that the fractures started not with brutality, but with hushed voices. This isn't about criminal behavior, it's a gradual descent. One movement after another. A tumble nobody prevented, despite everyone observing. Jennifer's tale has been shared previously. Official reports, legal documents, internet clips. However, they concentrate on the evening it occurred. We won't follow that path. We'll examine what preceded it. The decisions, the burden, the indicators. What if someone in your world is grinning like Jennifer once did? What if you're missing it too? She requested assistance through silence, through false accomplishments, through midnight messages, through tears she never allowed to flow. This chronicles those pleas for rescue. What does it actually signify to be the flawless child? For certain people, it's a gift, a mirror of affection and guidance. For others, it's a crushing disguise, one that constricts progressively, until finally, it transforms into a cell. Jennifer Pan entered the world on a blazing summer morning, June 17, 1986, in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, born to two Vietnamese refugees who had already survived more hardships than most endure in lifetimes. Her mother and father, Hue Han Pan and Bich Ha, had escaped war-ravaged Vietnam by boat, pursuing safety and opportunity in an unfamiliar country. They reached Canada carrying little beyond determination and dreams of better days. In Canada, they accomplished what countless immigrant families achieve. They constructed a fresh start from nothing. Han, precise and focused, secured employment as a tool and die craftsman at Magna International, a massive automotive parts company. Bich, caring yet equally ambitious, labored extensive hours at Olympia Tile to sustain the household. They existed simply, yet always with one clear objective, providing their children opportunities they never possessed. From Jennifer's first words, that ambition began materializing. She wasn't merely cherished, she was molded. Jennifer's reality was organized, structured, planned. Before most kids mastered shoelace tying, Jennifer was already competing in skating, attending piano instruction, and being groomed for academic excellence. She joined numerous enrichment programs, her schedule split between the ice rink, the piano, and mountains of mathematics and science textbooks. The expectation was obvious. Success wasn't a choice. It was demanded. Her days overflowed with activity upon activity, recognition only offered when she delivered results, not for trying, not for happiness, but for achievements. No sleepovers existed, no shopping trips, no television before assignments, no room for mistakes. She evolved, in every observable way, into an exemplary child, respectful, reserved, self-controlled, gifted. Yet underneath that appearance, something far more delicate was developing. Within Jennifer, a split was starting to grow. There was the Jennifer her parents observed, intelligent, hopeful, compliant. Then existed the Jennifer she concealed, bewildered, exhausted, yearning for space to exist. As early as middle school, she started experiencing the emotional cost of flawlessness. Her days were packed completely, yet she never truly felt acknowledged. Errors weren't gently fixed, they were examined. Feelings weren't discussed, they were buried. If she wept, she was instructed to become stronger. If she stumbled, she was reminded that others faced worse circumstances. If she succeeded, it was merely anticipated, not praised. By grade 8, Jennifer had already mastered wearing different faces. At school, she was gentle and respectful. Teachers called her well-behaved, concentrated, and disciplined. Yet she was also withdrawn, excessively withdrawn. Her smile appeared frequently, but rarely touched her eyes. She maintained friendships, yet kept them at safe distances. At home, her existence was closely watched. Her father, specifically, maintained strict control over her social connections. Dating was forbidden, parties were banned, distractions were eliminated. Jennifer wasn't raised for happiness, she was raised for achievement. When Jennifer sustained a severe injury during figure skating practice, her childhood aspiration of Olympic competition ended. No tears were shared, no time for mourning existed. Her parents immediately redirected her path. "You'll become a doctor," they declared, "or a pharmacist, or something honorable." Jennifer complied. At least she appeared to. Because what other option existed? Sometimes we deceive to avoid trouble. Other times, we lie to become who we're expected to be. How long before that deception becomes the only reality we recognize? Jennifer Pan's world didn't collapse suddenly. It eroded quietly. A misplaced detail here, a suspicious glance there. Long before anyone questioned her, she had already constructed a reality she could control, a version of herself that could survive the weight of perfection. It started in high school. Her grades weren't disastrous, but they weren't sufficient. Not for the daughter of immigrants who had surrendered their homeland, their language, and their dreams so she could live better. For Jennifer, almost wasn't close. It was failure. So she rewrote reality. She learned to modify transcripts, digitally changing B's into A's, creating school newsletters that praised her academic excellence. Her father, Han, glowed with pride. Her mother, Bitch, told neighbors about their daughter's brilliance. Nobody suspected anything. Jennifer was careful, calculated. She studied her deceptions the way others studied textbooks. Every forged document had a backup explanation. Every word was practiced, because in her house truth without achievement brought shame, and shame wasn't permitted. After high school, the deception grew larger. Jennifer told her parents she had been accepted into Ryerson University, studying science. When that narrative ran its course, she claimed she had transferred to the University of Toronto, studying pharmacology. None of it was real. Each morning, Jennifer would pack a bag, leave home dressed like a student, and go nowhere. She spent hours in cafes, libraries, or sitting quietly in parks. Her schedule was empty, yet she carried it with the urgency of someone juggling multiple lives. Her parents, they were proud. They told co-workers, family, friends. Jennifer's in medical school. They believed it, because they needed to. The illusion was perfect, for a while. She even claimed to be volunteering at a hospital, telling stories of long shifts and exhausted nights. She created fake contacts, email trails, even notes from professors. To maintain the lie, she said she had won scholarships, that she was part of study groups, that graduation was just around the corner. Behind every word was fear. Because Jennifer wasn't just lying to them, she was lying to herself. Friends started to notice. She avoided study questions, missed simple academic references, seemed vague when asked about her classes. Some suspected something wasn't right. She was charming, and most didn't push. Others just assumed she was shy, secretive, tired. Deep down, Jennifer knew the cracks were forming. Because when you're constantly acting, eventually, the performance slips. There are moments in life when someone walks in, and for the first time, you feel seen. Not for who you pretend to be, but for who you really are, underneath the layers. Jennifer Pan met Daniel Chi Kwong Wong while attending Mary Ward Catholic Secondary School in the suburbs of Scarborough, Ontario. At first, he didn't seem remarkable. He was relaxed, friendly, not particularly studious. He smiled easily. He didn't ask much. Most importantly, he didn't expect her to be perfect. That alone made him irresistible. In a life where Jennifer was constantly measured, Daniel made her feel unmeasured, free, real, enough. With Daniel, the pressure faded, even if only temporarily. He didn't care about GPAs, scholarships, or parental approval. He wasn't raised under the same shadow of rigid expectations. His world was looser, messier. To Jennifer, it felt like oxygen. He became her first real relationship, the first person she let behind the curtain, the first person who asked how she felt, not what she achieved. When she spoke, he listened. There was one unchangeable problem. Her parents would never approve. Han and Bish believed in structure, honor, reputation. Daniel, in their eyes, was everything they feared. A distraction, a threat, a boy who didn't fit the mold. He had a minor criminal record. He dealt small-time substances. He lacked ambition, at least by their definition, so they forbade the relationship. Strict rules were put in place. No calls, no visits, no mention of his name. But Jennifer wasn't ready to let go. She created a third life, one even riskier than the last. One version of Jennifer lived at home, respectful and reserved. Another attended a fictional university, chasing a degree that didn't exist. Now a third version met Daniel in the shadows, a girlfriend, a dreamer, a rebel, cloaked in secrecy. She lied about her classes to see him. She claimed she had late-night labs when they were really midnight meetings. She said she was too tired to talk because she'd been studying, when in truth she'd been out with him for hours. The double life she once crafted to avoid failure was now tangled with a fantasy escape. By 2008, the weight of Jennifer's deception and her deepening emotional need had become overwhelming. Daniel, no longer content with half of her, began pulling away. They fought, reconciled, fought again. Jennifer begged, pleaded. He started seeing someone else, and a girl named Christine. For Jennifer, this wasn't just heartbreak, it was panic. Because without him, her escape was gone. She had spent so long pretending. She no longer knew which life was hers. The daughter, the student, the lover. Which one was real? Which one was a role? What would happen if all of them collapsed at once? There comes a moment when the lies we build start to weigh more than the truth we buried. A moment where everything, no matter how carefully hidden, begins to surface. For years, Jennifer had balanced her world like glass. Each layer, daughter, student, lover, was crafted with precision. She had rehearsed every story, memorized every schedule, maintained every illusion. Illusions have limits. Jennifer's was about to break. It began when her father, Han Pan, grew curious. Not suspicious, at first, just uneasy. Certain details didn't add up. Why couldn't Jennifer provide official university letters? Why had he never met any of her professors? Why didn't her supposed graduation ceremony have a formal invite? Han did what any determined father might do. He began to investigate. He made phone calls. He checked records. He drove her to the University of Toronto campus one day and watched her walk in, then waited. Hours passed. She never came out. That was the moment the entire story began to collapse. Jennifer had never been enrolled. There was no degree, no tuition, no internship, nothing. The life she had sold to her parents, one forged over years, did not exist. Jennifer was confronted. Han and Bitch sat her down. This wasn't anger. This was betrayal. How could she lie like this? For years, Where had she been going? What had she been doing? They didn't shout. They didn't scream. Their disappointment was louder than any raised voice. For Jennifer, that was far worse. Her parents imposed a complete lockdown. She was no longer trusted. Her cell phone, confiscated, laptop, removed. She was forbidden to leave the house unsupervised. They even followed her from room to room. She was 23 years old and treated like she was 12. The most painful part. Daniel was gone. Communication severed. No more messages, no more calls. The one person who made her feel understood, cut out completely. Her world, already fragile, began to cave in. In that silence, desperation was born. She wasn't just grounded. She was isolated, emotionally walled off, watched, stripped of all control. No future, no freedom, no one to talk to, no one who truly understood how tightly she had been wounded. The walls of her world were closing in, not because she was reckless, but because the truth had finally caught her. The mask she wore so well no longer fit. There is a point where desperation begins to speak louder than reason, where the desire to be free becomes louder than the fear of consequence. Sometimes the line between escape and destruction begins to blur. Jennifer Pan had lost control of the story she had written for so long. Her double life, carefully constructed, tenderly maintained, had been exposed. Her parents no longer saw her as the high-achieving daughter they had once adored. Her days were confined, her every move watched. The only person who had ever made her feel known was no longer by her side. Even broken trust doesn't eliminate longing. So quietly, cautiously, Jennifer reached out to Daniel again. Daniel answered. At first, their conversations were slow, strained. Too much had happened. Too many lies had been told. The bond between them, though frayed, still held some weight. Daniel listened as Jennifer poured out her sorrow. She described the walls closing in, the constant monitoring, the silence. She told him she couldn't take it anymore, that she was barely breathing under the pressure. She never spoke of brutality. What she spoke of was freedom. Jennifer didn't want to disappear. She wanted a life, a quiet one, her own, without constant control, without shame, without judgment. In her mind, there was only one way to get there: remove the obstacle. She wasn't seeking revenge, she wasn't driven by hatred. What she wanted was a clean break, a way to erase the walls around her. To do that, her parents had to be out of the picture. Daniel introduced her to someone, a man named Lenford Crawford, also known as Homeboy, a small-time criminal who had claimed on occasion to know people who could handle things. Jennifer didn't ask for blood. She didn't demand death. She asked for a solution. A staged robbery, she said. A break-in gone wrong, she wouldn't be hurt. Her father and mother would be taken care of. In her own words, I didn't want them dead. I just wanted them gone. Gone meant freedom. Gone meant silence. Gone meant never being a disappointment again. The plan came together quickly. A few calls, a time, a location. $10,000 was the price. The script was simple. Tie Jennifer up, make it look real, remove the parents, leave without trace. Jennifer rehearsed it in her mind like a school presentation. No matter how many times she recited the steps, something didn't sit right, because this was no longer a lie. This was a decision. As the sun set on November 7th, 2010, Jennifer wasn't thinking about consequences. She wasn't imagining headlines. She was hoping that by morning she would finally be free. But freedom is never free. Sometimes the door we open to escape becomes the one that traps us forever. It began like any other evening, uneventful, still. Beneath the surface, something irreversible was already unfolding. Sometimes darkness doesn't crash in. It slips quietly through the cracks. The night of November 8th, 2010 began with routine. Dinner was prepared. Lights dimmed. Doors locked. Inside the Pan residence, nothing looked out of place. What no one could see, not even those who lived there, was that this night had already been written in someone's mind long before it happened. Jennifer sat upstairs in her room, her fingers trembling over her phone. She knew what time they were coming. She knew what she had agreed to. Still, she stayed. Around 9:30 p.m. the door opened, not with a bang, but with practiced ease. 3 masked men entered. They moved quickly, silently. No shouting, no chaos. Only a haunting calm, the kind that comes when the outcome is already known. Jennifer was tied to the banister at the top of the staircase, not forcefully, not violently. She positioned herself, she played her part. Her parents, caught entirely off guard, were taken downstairs. Her father, Han, was restrained. Her mother, Bich, was led to the basement. Within minutes, everything changed. At 10:08 p.m., Jennifer dialed 911. Her voice was steady, almost too steady.
Some people broke into our house and they showed all his money. Ma'am.
She described the intruders, the sound of footsteps, the voices in the house. She never screamed, she never begged, she narrated. On the other end of the line, the dispatcher remained calm. What they didn't know, and what no one knew, was that even as Jennifer pleaded for help, her mother was dying in the basement below. It was not a night of chaos, not here, not in this story. It was a night of choices, of masks worn, of roles played too well. Jennifer, still tied at the top of the stairs, performed both fear and innocence. She gave just enough confusion, just enough trembling. Behind her eyes was something else, something harder to define. Not coldness, not malice, but detachment, as if the girl who once longed for love had been replaced. Her father, critically injured, survived. Her mother did not. The home was filled with quiet horror. In the center of it all was a daughter, untied and cradled in a blanket, recounting her version of events with measured clarity. She wept. She shook. She asked, "Why would anyone do this to us?" Inside, the truth sat silent. The truth is patient. It waits, sometimes in silence, sometimes in shadows. It always arrives. When it does not knock. It breaks the door wide open. Against all expectations, Han Pan survived. The projectile had torn through his face, entering through his forehead and exiting near his eye, but miraculously, he lived. It was a long night of emergency surgery, intensive care, and prayers whispered by stunned doctors. He made it. When Han woke up, still weak, unable to fully speak, he whispered something the investigators weren't prepared for. "I saw Jennifer. She was talking, like she knew them." That single sentence changed everything. Until that moment, Jennifer had been treated as a victim, the traumatized daughter who had survived a violent home invasion. She had cried. She had shaken. She had answered every question with sorrowful hesitation. Now, the focus shifted. This time, Jennifer wasn't being comforted. She was being watched. The interview began gently. "Where were you sitting? What did they look like? How did they enter?" Jennifer responded as she had before, with confidence and composure. The investigators had done their homework. They knew something Jennifer didn't. Her story wasn't adding up. Phone records showed calls made at suspicious hours. Text messages hinted at planning. Bank transactions revealed quiet withdrawals. Surveillance footage contradicted her timeline. Slowly, methodically, the walls she had rebuilt after that night began to tremble. "Jennifer," the detective said gently, "we know you weren't tied up. We know you were in contact with them. We've seen the messages." Jennifer blinked. Her breathing changed. She looked away. For the first time, the mask began to slip. At first, she denied everything, then shifted the blame. She said she had tried to call it off, that she never meant for anyone to be harmed, that she was desperate, afraid, alone. Her voice cracked. Tears formed, real ones. This was no longer a story she could control. The trial began in 2014, nearly 4 years after the incident. Jennifer was charged with first-degree elimination, attempted elimination, and conspiracy to commit elimination. Alongside her, stood the three men involved, Lenford Crawford, David Milvaganam, and Eric Carty, all facing the same charges. Inside the courtroom, the evidence was overwhelming. Jennifer's texts arranging the hit, her internet searches for how to hire a hitman, the staged 911 call, her shifting confessions under pressure. The most damning testimony, her father, Han Pan, stood still scarred and said in a broken voice, "I lost my wife and my daughter on the same night." After weeks of witness statements, digital evidence, and emotional testimony, the verdict came: guilty. Jennifer Pan was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for 25 years. The courtroom was silent. No screams, no tears, just the sound of something finally ending. She had wanted freedom. Instead, she built her own prison, not of bars, but of choices she could never undo. In the end, the person Jennifer had become was unrecognizable, even to herself. This was never a story about monsters or villains. It wasn't about hatred or rage or revenge. It was about something quieter, something slower, something much harder to see. It was about pressure left unchecked, about pain kept quiet, about a girl who forgot who she was just to be who she thought she had to be. In the end, it wasn't evil that unraveled this story. It was silence. If someone in your life is smiling just a little too perfectly, if their story feels too polished, too rehearsed, ask them twice. Sometimes a second question can save a life. What pain are we overlooking in the people we think we know? Thank you for following this story to the end. If it moved you, if it made you pause, if it reminded you of someone you know, please consider sharing it. Stories like this aren't just meant to be watched, they're meant to be felt. We want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your country, city, or even your couch emoji in the comments below. Let's see how far this message can reach.